At 4:59 a.m., with the mist curling around the iron bars of my estate gate, I stood on the upstairs balcony and watched Karen's silver SUV ease up with the headlights dimmed like they were trying to rob the place instead of dropping in for a family vacation. Her parents were huddled in the passenger seats, nervous as raccoons, which, if you ask me, was about the only time I'd seen them actually nervous, because for years they carried themselves like they owned everything they could see from the church steeple on down. But this morning it was my show. I had spent 2 years and every spare dime dragging this place out of ruin, pouring sweat and stubbornness into each board and beam, and as Karen reached for that old brass key, the one I deliberately made useless, the new reinforced gate motor snapped shut with a sound that echoed across the empty lawn, sharp enough to make her folks jump in their seats and put a grin right on my face. That's when it hit me. I'd been waiting for this. For that exact moment. She realized the game had changed and her family's old stories didn't open doors anymore. The irony, if you want to talk about irony, is just 2 weeks earlier, she'd come by with a casserole and a parade of compliments, acting grateful for my hard work and bragging about how much her parents adored the estate. "We just love what you've done. It feels like home again, right?" As if that was supposed to mean something to me. I knew she was lying, but seeing her fumble that key, whispering to her folks that she'd handle it, felt like the world had finally flipped upright. She fought with the lock, jabbed the keypad, and when that failed, every new camera I'd installed flickered on one after another, like the place itself was rolling its eyes at her. Honestly, it was hard not to laugh, even with the stakes high, because all I could see was a desperate family trying to hijack something they'd already written off decades ago. See, this estate, she used to be the grand old place at the end of the county road, left for dead after the bank foreclosed. 30 years it sat empty, and when I bought it at auction, the locals thought I'd lost my mind. But to me, every busted window and rotted board was a step back towards something solid. After my own life had come apart, call it therapy or maybe just stubbornness, but I needed this house as much as it needed me. So when Karen started circling, acting like her grandparents' garden parties meant she had a claim, I knew I was in for a storm, like thunder in the hills, you know. At first she played nice, showing up with cookies, always asking about deeds, taxes, permits, questions that don't belong in small talk. But her eyes kept darting to the gate controls, the mail slot, the corners of the house, like she was casing the joint. The night before all this blew up, I walked the grounds with a flashlight, double-locking the stable doors, feeling the cold settle in, and I just knew she'd try something soon, because entitlement always rears up after you show a little kindness. When she started in on the lock that morning, I thought back to the day I signed the deed, the county clerk raising an eyebrow, like he was watching a man sign his own death warrant, the realtor warning me about local feelings, and I remembered promising myself I'd prove every last one of them wrong. Fixing this place wasn't just about restoring a house. It was how I clawed myself back from a brutal divorce and a life that had gone sideways. Each nail, each stone, hell, each time I patched a roof leak at 2 a.m. was me refusing to quit. That's why Karen's scheme burned so much deeper than a simple boundary dispute. She wasn't just after property. She was after the only thing I'd built for myself in years. The sprinklers hissed to life as dawn broke, silvering the rosebeds, and Karen stomped back to her SUV, probably to call the sheriff, not knowing I'd already had coffee with him weeks earlier and walked him through the new security system. Her parents tried to reason with her, their voices floating up. "Maybe we should go." "Karen, this isn't worth it." I just watched, remembering the nights I slept on a cot inside the shell of the library with a thermos of coffee. No heat, no help, certainly not from Karen, who once told her friends the place would collapse before I was done. Now that it shined with the lawns clipped and the chandeliers blazing, she thought it belonged to her family. Never mind the sweat, the bills, the nights I lay awake listening for leaks and break-ins. She kept at the keypad, cursing, while her parents shrank behind the windshield. I let her stew, savoring every second honestly, already drafting a note for the HOA board in my head. letting the grapevine know exactly whose name was on the deed now. The sun punched through the mist, turning the gate gold, and Karen looked like a villain in a play whose script she'd never read. I slipped downstairs, opened the side door to the carriage house, boots crunching on gravel just loud enough to let them know I was there. She whipped around, tried to recover, claimed she was just checking on things for me, voice quivering like a bad cover band. I didn't even bite. I told her how the new system could catch a loose nail, how the county had officially named me as the estate's steward, and how trespassing meant real consequences now. Her parents' faces dropped, realizing this wasn't their daughter's inheritance but a pipe dream gone wrong. I lowered the privacy screen, told them future visits needed written notice, no exceptions. Karen tried one last play. I still have the old codes, but I just leaned in and told her every code, every lock, every authority had been changed and notified. This was my house, legally, physically, and in spirit, and she'd have to spin a whole new fairy tale to her parents about why they couldn't get in. They left slow and defeated, their SUV swallowed by the trees. Only then did I let myself breathe. I knew this was just the first battle. Karen's pride runs deep as bedrock, but the line was drawn. I stood on the steps, breathing in wet earth and paint, already planning my next move. The quiet sting operation with my lawyer, the county inspector's visit, all the angles she'd never see coming. This had turned from a fight over dirt to a fight over principle, the right to build something of your own and defend it from anyone who thinks your sweat is theirs for the taking. The estate stood behind me, all glass and stone, reborn and waiting. Funny thing is, the next week it felt like the house itself was keeping score. Every echo in the hall, every gust of wind through the orchard felt like a reminder of how much I'd given up to get here. And it all started long before the showdown at the gate, back when the estate was nothing but broken dreams and brambles, when I first set foot on the porch and felt the bones of something worth saving. I saw past the wrought imagined lanterns, glowing fireplaces roaring, took the leap when everyone else called it madness. Those first months were a grind roofs, caving in raccoons, nesting in the pantry, the whole place reeking of mold and hopelessness. Karen wasn't around for that, of course. She only showed up after the heavy lifting, when it was safe to call it beautiful. She'd appear with lemon squares and a smile, asking about my schedule, the auction, what I planned for the property, never just neighborly curiosity, always an angle. As the estate came together, her visits turned into regular intrusions. She'd drop by with gifts and ask if her parents could visit, if she could host a party, if she could use the driveway. Little things meant to make the place everyone's in their minds until no one remembered who actually owned it. I started a journal logging every conversation, just facts, just dates, because I could feel deep down it would matter someday. Sure enough, things escalated. I'd find her car parked at the edge of the property late at night, headlights off. One evening I found the side gate open, Karen and her folks wandering toward the stables, acting like they owned the place. I walked them out, called my lawyer, and locked down every inch, contracts, fences, paperwork, the whole 9 yards. She tried to shift tactics, offering landscaping gifts, hinting at her parents' health, even volunteering to host school kids. Each time I shut it down with a smile, polite but ironclad. You learn quick that it's easier to rebuild a house than keep it safe from ambition. Karen turned from neighbor to opponent. I turned from dreamer to defender. By the time the estate was whole again, she'd moved from subtle hints to outright stunts flyers for open houses I never approved, stolen photos online, even a forged booking scam. Each move she made, I stayed 2 steps ahead, upgrading security, laying legal traps, gathering evidence. The day she showed up with a moving van and a caravan of would-be guests claiming reservations for a weekend stay, I was ready. Hit Record called the sheriff watched her confidence crumble on camera as deputies laid it out in black and white: fraud, trespassing, the whole list. That was the turning point, the moment the narrative snapped. Karen's schemes exposed her guests turning on her, the sheriff's lights chasing her off my driveway. The estate itself seemed to breathe easier, and for the first time since I'd started, I could walk through the halls and feel proud. Relieved, yeah, but proud. Over time, the news spread. Neighbors who doubted me started waving from afar. Karen's name faded from the local grapevine. The estate became not just a house, but a sanctuary protected by law memory and my own hard-won patience. Now, some nights I walk the grounds, hands in my pockets, listening to the water in the fountain, remembering that first hopeless winter. The gate stands strong, the house glows from within, and I know I've built something no one can steal, not with keys, not with lies, not with all the nostalgia in the world. Karen's gone now, barred by law and by her own shame. The estate finally is at peace, and so am I. So tell me, where do you draw the line between neighborly pride and plain old theft? Ever had to defend what was yours against someone who just couldn't let go? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your stories. Justice, entitlement, sweat. What do they mean to you when the gate swings shut? Let's talk about it.